So the topic for today is Joseph and the sovereign hand of God. So let's go back to to Jacob, the father of Joseph. So then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So remember, the last thing that we talked about was the reconciliation between Esau and his brother Jacob. So Jacob decided to go back to Canaan, and on his way, he brought some gifts for Esau, and then he was afraid if he was not so sure how Esau would encounter him. And the beautiful thing is, Esau embraced him and kissed him, and that was their reconciliation. Okay, so God said that he goes to Bethel. So he went there, and and then God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with him. Okay, so very familiar this thing of be fruitful and increase in number. Remember, with with Adam, our Lord says, "Go and multiply." So this has been something consistent on the part of our Lord, asking the his chosen ones to be fruitful and to increase in number. Okay, that is why fertility is part of the blessing. No, to be fertile. Not that's why barrenness is a curse. Okay, and then again, he continued the promise that he gave to Abraham: "A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants." Okay. So from Bethel going to the land given to him by God, no, through Abraham and Isaac, what happened? Rachel, remember Rachel was his beloved wife, his true love. Okay. And for a time, Rachel was barren until finally he gave birth to Joseph. And then on their way to the place in Canaan, Rachel gave birth to another son, Benjamin, but she died after. So she died after giving birth to Benjamin. Okay. And also what happened, Isaac died and was buried by Jacob and Esau. So that's what happened. So two deaths. No? So you can see how really Jacob and Esau were already reconciled and they were able to bury their father. Okay. Now what happened next? So Esau and Jacob lived together with their own slaves and families, but then because of the fruitfulness of their fruitfulness, there was an extensive livestock and all that. They realized that they cannot stay together. Hindi kaya na, no? So Esau decided, no, and Esau and Jacob decided to separate ways. And Esau and his family lived in Seir. So ang umalis si Esau. And Esau was also called Edom. That's why Esau's people were called Edomites. Well, later, maybe in our study, lalabas yung Edomites. So yung mga Edomites are the people, the descendants of Esau. And they settled in Seir. Okay? Actually, if you will read the Bible, makikita mo, from Esau, many of his descendants became kings. Okay? Chieftains, mga ganyan. So yan po yung descendants ni Esau. Now, let's go to Jacob. Now, makikita mo, nag-jump din yung Bible. Biglang sa Genesis 37, it already started to talk about Joseph. And I quote, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. So itong robe na to of many colors. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So, yung favoritism talagang very, very much part of their life. So, remember, Jacob was the favorite of Rebecca. Okay? And Esau was the favorite of Isaac. This time of his 11 sons, 12 sons, no? Ang favorite talaga niya si Jacob kasi firstborn yan kay Rachel. After so many years of barrenness, Rachel gave birth to Joseph. Kaya yan po ang favorite niya. Now, what happened? Now, Joseph was a dreamer. Lagi siyang nangangarap. And Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves. Ito po yun eh, no? Sheaves. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Oh, eh di syempre ang interpretation la, wow, so ikaw pala, no? Ang magiging aming master. So, so his brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Si ano kasi teenager eh, bata pa siya, si Joseph dito. And so, with all simplicity, he was just telling them about his dreams. So, kaso yung dream na yun, eh, ibig sabihin nun nga, no, na magiging head pa, no, he will reign over them. Now, one day, no, ito na nga po ang situation, one day, si Jacob was with Joseph while the rest were in the field, no? And Jacob told Joseph, go and look for your brothers and join them. So, wearing his robe, he went to the field, and finally, he was about to reach them when the brothers said this. This was their conversation. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dream. So yun yung first plan nila. As he was approaching, these brothers were conversing among themselves. So patayin na natin tong brother natin. Okay? And then what happened? Then when Reuben, yung eldest son, the Jacob, heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So, wag daw patayin, lagay lang sa cistern. With the intention of Reuben of getting him out of the cistern and giving it to his father. So, yun naman po. Yun naman ang second plan. Okay? Ngayon, merong caravan. May mga merchants who were approaching. So, ito yung third plan. Si Judah naman po ang nagsabi. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. So yun po ang nangyari. So finally, they decided to sell Joseph to the Ishmaelites. For how much? 20 pieces of silver. He was sold as a slave to the Ishmaelites. He was 70 years old. So fast forward the time of Jesus Christ, someone betrayed him. He was sold for 30 pieces of silver by Judas. Ito po, 20 pieces. Yung time ni Judas, 30 pieces. Okay? So, what happened to Joseph? Before that, what happened? So, syempre, dapat may alibay ang mga anak ni Jacob. What happened to Joseph? So, Jacob was deceived by his sons. So this is what they told him. Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, "We found this. Examine to see whether it is your son's robe." O, tingnan mo. Tingnan mo nga kung anak mo to. Parang hindi niya nila brother. Of course, na-recognize ni Jacob na yun nga ang robe na binigay niya sa favorite son niya. So, dito po, usually, di ba sabi natin sa Bible, parang wala masyadong emotions. Dito, nakita na natin ang emotions kasi Jacob grieved for Joseph. And it says, "Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. 'No,' he said, 'I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave.' So his father wept for him." So you cannot imagine, favorite son niya to, biglang nawala. And then with the blood on his robe, then the conclusion is he was already devoured by an animal. No? Patay na si Joseph. So, makita niyo kalokohan ng mga kapatid ni Joseph. No? Envy. That's their sin. Envy. Okay? So, of course, envy led to what? Selling their own brother. Actually, si Ruben didn't know na napagbili si Joseph. So, nung binalikin niya yung sister, na-realize niya, uy, wala na yung kapatid ko. Later na lang niya nalaman. So, Ruben was not part of that evil plan. Okay? Now, what happened to Joseph? Joseph sold to the Pharaoh's official. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. So, tingnan nyo, ito po providence, no? Providence. So, makikita nyo, I forgot to say, no? The providence of God in what happened to Joseph. Remember, the brothers originally desired to kill him. So God allowed the envy, okay? God allowed that they hated him. And then they now plan to kill him. Pero nag-change ng plan, di ba? Through Judah, they said, wag natin patayin, no? Okay? Kasi brother natin yan. Okay? And then, sabi ni Judah, pagbili na lang natin. So, you can see there, no? That God used even the weaknesses of his brothers to bring about his divine plan, which later we will know. Pero of course, he intervened to make sure that Joseph will not be killed. And he allowed that Joseph be brought to Egypt. Another part of the divine providence was, kanino pinagbili si Joseph in Egypt to a man who has what? Who's an official under Pharaoh. That was part of divine plan. No, si Potiphar was the one who bought Joseph, sorry. Okay. So what happened? Potiphar, his master, entrusted his household to Joseph, seeing how the Lord was with him and blessed him in everything he did. Makikita nyo naman, no? Magaling po si Joseph. He was a teenager, remember? He was sold at the age of 17. Okay? But then, since slave siya, binibigyan siya ng mga tasks ng kanyang master. But everything that was entrusted to Joseph prospered, was blessed. So, tonto si Potiphar, sabi niya, uy, ikaw na bahala. I will entrust everything. All my household, ikaw na bahala. Okay? Now, lagi may drama. So, anong drama? Yung wife ni Potiphar, nagkagusto kay Joseph. Kasi gwapo daw si Joseph and well-built. Okay? So, the Potiphar's wife was attracted to Joseph. And when she saw, she could not lure him kasi ilang beses niya tinry siya. Sabi niya, come. Ayaw. And then at one point, kinatch niya na si Joseph. Sabi niya, come on. Sabi niya. And then sabi ni Joseph, my master has given me everything, entrusted to me everything, except his wife. And do you think, sabi niya, Sabi niya, how could I betray him now? And how can I do this thing against God? You see, makita niyo dito si Joseph, very, very faithful to God. Okay? So, siyempre, feeling rejected tong wife ni Potiphar. So, what did she do? She reported Joseph to Potiphar, to her husband, of attempting to get her. Binaliktad niya po ang storya. Kasi nakuha niya yung ano eh, in that encounter, tumakbo si Joseph, nakuha niya yung cloak ni Joseph. At sinabi niya, tingnan mo ito, oh, he even tried to get me. So ang problema, si Potiphar, naniwala kay wife. And so he was so angry. So what did he do? Pinakulong niya si Joseph. You see, the chosen ones of God also suffer. May blessings. He had a lot of blessings, but he also had to suffer. For one, he was sold, no? And brought to Egypt. Suddenly, he didn't have a family, okay? And he was put in a foreign land. And now that he's starting to do good, okay na sana, blessed na siya. Now, this time, he was falsely accused and now imprisoned. So, but while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. So ito na naman, no? So in the midst of that miserable situation, naging the task that was given to him was blessed again by the Lord. So nahanga na naman tong warden. And so, like Potiphar, he entrusted everything to Joseph. So talagang very good administrator si Joseph. No? And to think he was very young. Okay? And then, so ayan, no? Ayan na naman, blessing. But he still remained in prison. And then what happened? Ito pa. Ano naman ito parang telenovela eh, no? As you read the Bible, it's like a telenovela, okay? So now the story of a cupbearer and a baker. So this cupbearer and a baker, basta hindi, they did something that the Pharaoh didn't like. So in-imprison silang dalawa where Joseph was. So Joseph and the cupbearer and baker were imprisoned in the same cell. So the Pharaoh was angry with the cupbearer and baker and had them in prison with Joseph. Both had a dream and Joseph interpreted both correctly. So sabi ng cupbearer, meron sinabing storya. And then sabi niya, interpretation yan. Ibig sabihin yan, babalik ka sa Pharaoh. You will serve him again. Di natuwa naman yung baker. Wow, good news. Pero ang bad news yung napapunta kay baker na in the end, the Pharaoh will execute him. And this was exactly what happened. The cupbearer went back to the service of Pharaoh while the baker was executed. Now, before the cupbearer was released, sabi niya sa cupbearer, when you go back to the Pharaoh, please remember me and tell him about me. No, because I am here and I'm innocent. Ang problema sa cupbearer, natuwa siya sa pangyayari sa buhay niya, nakalimutan niya si Joseph. So sabi mo, what a misfortune for Joseph, no? But again, no, God continues to be with Joseph. After 2 full years had passed, so 2 years pa siya na added 2 years, no? Nasa Genesis 41 na tayo. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. So si Pharaoh naman po ang nangarap. When out of the river, there came out 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. So na-trouble yung Pharaoh. Ano ba yon? And then when he slept again, he had another dream, which is similar to this. And the more he got troubled. And then what happened? He wanted someone to interpret the dream for him. So he called the magicians, the wise people, but no one could interpret his dreams. And that's when the cupbearer remembered Joseph. And he said, "Oh, Pharaoh, I forgot, no, this thing." Actually, so kinuwento niya that when he was in prison, ganyan, and his dream was interpreted and it happened by Joseph. So of course, you cannot imagine, Pharaoh was very interested to meet Joseph. So ito na yung na-remember, Joseph then interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh. So sinabi ng Pharaoh yung dream niya. And then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same." Sabi niya in the beginning, "I cannot interpret your dreams. Only God can." No? And then, so very humble si Joseph. So he made it clear to the Pharaoh that whatever he would say would be from God. So God has revealed to Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up after are 7 years. So are there 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. There are 7 years of famine. So, ibig sabihin niyan, in Egypt, there will be 7 years of abundance. And then after 7 years of abundance, there will be 7 years of famine. And so he was instructed. So from Joseph, he said, the Pharaoh is being instructed to take advantage of the 7 years of abundance to store his grains, no? So that after 7 years of abundance, they will have something enough for them and to sell to the world because of the famine. Okay, so, and then sabi ni Joseph that he should entrust it, someone has to administer the grains. Eh di sabi ni Pharaoh, eh di ikaw, you will be the administrator. So what happened to Joseph became in charge of Egypt. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Can you imagine that? From being sold as a slave and then imprisoned, and then now he's the one in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And to think that he is a Jew, okay? Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command. And people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Ganon pong naging powerful po si Joseph. Can you imagine? Who would have guessed that this was the plan of God? And for it to happen, he had to allow or permit the envy of his brother to sell him as a slave in Egypt. Okay? So, given that nagkaroon na ng abundance, so Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Sobra-sobra po, no? So, ayan po, no? So he went around Egypt. He was not anymore under the close supervision of of Pharaoh kasi ang laki-laki ng Egypt. So he would go to different places in Egypt making sure that whatever they harvested, the grains will be stored, preparing for what? The famine. Okay? 7 years po yan in abundance. Okay? Now, while during these 7 years of abundance, Pharaoh gave Joseph a wife, which happened to be the daughter of a certain priest. I think the name is Oni. So he was given a wife, okay? And then Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, during the 7 years of prosperity. So nauna po si Manasseh and then later Ephraim. Very important po to yung 2 sons na to later in the story. Okay? Now, when famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grains to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. So this is something that God allowed, no? Famine around the known world. And it was so severe. Okay. No. Okay. Hoy, aga pa. Okay. So actually, mahaba po yung storya, but I will not use anymore the PowerPoint kasi I thought, part two, but let's see how far we can go. No? So what happened? So the next thing is Jacob said, don't stay here. He asked his children, his sons, go to Egypt and buy grains because we will all die here of famine. So what did he do? He asked all the sons to go to Egypt except who? Benjamin, yung second favorite niya, yung anak niya, second son niya, kay Rachel. Sabi niya, hindi ko pwedeng payagang mawalay sa akin si Benjamin because I already lost my son to Rachel, and this second son, I cannot anymore lose him, otherwise I will die. So ganun pong kamahal niya talaga si Rachel, na yung yung two sons niya kay Rachel ay talaga niyang minamahal at favorite. Okay, so eventually the 10 brothers, no? The 10 brothers went to Egypt.